It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Hello, my viewers. That's an old school reference right there. Hello, my viewers. That is, let's see if someone can get that in the chat. Who is that? Saw a good question come through right now. And JYPHC said, what will happen if you mix POE oil and mineral oil? Well, when 410A was first coming out in the mid-90s, early 90s, it was, concept, but when it was really starting to come out, there was this theory that if you mixed polyester oil and mineral oil, that the system would just die. Like, oh my gosh, you need separate sets of gauges and separate hoses and all this stuff, okay? In reality, it's not the end of the world, but the thing about, and I'm not a chemist, right? I don't know all the science behind it, but basically, the issue with the oils, that polyester oil and mineral oil don't quite mix correctly, but the real issue is that they don't travel, right? Mineral oil tends to travel with certain refrigerants versus polyester oil tends to travel better with certain refrigerants too. So it's really about how it reacts with the particular refrigerant it's working with. And that's the problem. So I'm sure you can talk to some chemists, sciencey people, and they can give you a much more in-depth answer other than my dumb logic one. But yeah, that was a mystery in the beginning. Early 2000s, it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? 410A, we have to change the oil, like all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that was a bit hyped, okay? It's not as big of a deal as they made it out to be for sure. I certainly don't carry separate sets of gauges for every refrigerant or anything like that. I have 2 sets of gauges, actual manifolds in my van. I have a Testo manifold that I don't think I've ever used ever since I made a video with it. It's just a backup manifold because it's super small and it hangs on my rack. And then I have my Field Piece S-Man manifold that I use all day long, and I have my job link probes, but I use them on all different refrigerants, POE, mineral oil, alkybenzene, whatever that other oil is, not PAG, that's an automotive one, but there's another oil too. I can't think of the name of it right now, but yeah, it was a bit overhyped about the whole mixing of oils thing. So, let me see. So, lots of good questions in here. Some interesting questions before the chat too. So first off, welcome to the HVACR videos live stream for the new people that are here. My name is Chris. I'm an HVAC service technician here in Southern California. Also run a business and started making these videos for my employees, and it just turned into a thing. And it's, I used to say a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I think we're at like 4 years or 3. I don't know. We've been doing these forever. November of 2017 is when the channel was first started. So what is that? 18, 19, 20, 21. Holy crud. We're going to be 5 years this year. This November, this YouTube channel is going to be 5 years old. Wow, that is crazy. Time has flown. You know, I have never planned on it doing anything. I have always just done my own thing, and it just grew. It isn't until recently that I've started thinking about putting more effort into this channel. I've always just kind of let it do its thing. I'm thankful for that, you know, but like I never wanted this channel to turn into a job. But I'm starting to have more fun with it. I'm starting to get new ideas, and I definitely run this channel the way that I want to run it. I can't tell you how many times I turn sponsors and different people down, and it's not because I'm loaded with money or anything. I'm not, but I just don't want anybody telling me how to run my channel. I don't want to be owned by anybody. Don't get me wrong. I do have sponsors and people that I work with and stuff, but they're all very cool and like the way that I do things, right? So anyways, I've never been one to kind of follow the norm. I've never been one to do clickbaity titles per se. Like sometimes there will be a title or a thumbnail that I'll use, but it's natural, right? I don't like to do manufactured stuff, and nothing against people that do that. It's just not my style of things to do. So, let me see. Let me see what else we got going on in here. What am I missing? So if you guys do have questions, do me a favor, put them in caps lock. That helps me to be able to field the questions a little bit better. If I miss your question, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Okay. I wanted to bring this up right now. Bam, I showed this on Instagram. Check this out. Now, YouTube's probably going to flag me for my ray gun here. This is a Robinair leak detector, guys. If I haven't shown this on here yet, I don't know what pictures I've posted on social media. This is a vintage Robinair leak detector from the 70s. Is that not the coolest leak detector you have ever seen? I love this thing. This was given to me at the HVAC training symposium by a gentleman named Chris Eads, and it was really cool of him. He heard me talking about old tools, and he offered these up, and this is like a highlight of mine. I want to see if I can make this work. Now, this was really meant for chlorinated refrigerants, so it's not very useful today. You have a sample tube for, you know, that stuff, or, you know, for R11 refrigerant, I guess, more so. So that way you can use it as a, and there's a little screw right there that you can loosen and use it on the leak detector to test to make sure that it's actually working right. So that's cool. But I've yet to figure out what style of leak detector this is. It kind of looks like a heated diode or something. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. Ooh, look at something unscrews. Whoa, check that out. No, it's not a heated diode. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. I don't know what type of leak detector it is, but it is the coolest thing I have seen in a very long time. I wish they made stuff like this still. It was funny. I was at the training symposium and I showed this to a few of the people from Field Piece, and they were like, "What is that thing?" And I was like, "You guys need to make something like this." And I just lost my little vial at the top. Chris had also given me this leak detector too. It's just so cool to see these little itty bitty leak detectors. These things are awesome. I love old tools. I'm going to start collecting them more, add these to my collection of stuff that I have in the back. All right. So Chris actually, and I'm going to give him a shameless plug. I have nothing to do with him. I mean, you know, there's those are cool, but there's really no value, but I'm going to give him a plug. Chris actually has a product. He was showcasing a product at the HVAC training symposium, and it was a PVC condensate system, right? And it's actually just these tees that have these removable caps and these little plugs for cleaning out the condensate line. So go check it out at acezt.com. It's a pretty cool little system, I think, especially for the residential guys. It doesn't really fit in what I do, but for the residential guys, it's a really neat little system. So check it out. All right, I'm going to look in the chat. Chris Anderson, superheat question from the walk-in freezer video circa like a year ago. And yeah, I actually got that written right here, Chris. So Chris asked me a question. I think it was a walk-in cooler, was it not? But regardless, the whole point, Chris's question was, I was working on I believe it was an R448A system, and he was curious if my desired superheat would change with the refrigerant. And the answer is no, okay? I'm aiming for, on a walk-in freezer, as low as you can safely get the superheat. Usually between 6 to 8 degrees of evaporator superheat is what I'm aiming for on a walk-in freezer. And on a walk-in cooler, anywhere from 8 to 12 degrees superheat, depending on how the system was designed, okay? And it doesn't really change with refrigerants, okay? We're going to try to maintain the same superheat for every different refrigerant. So insert whatever flavor you want, R22, 404, 134A, all these different ones. I'm still going to aim for that same superheat, because the superheat, you're trying to get as much efficiency out of the evaporator, but you're also trying to maintain some sort of a superheat, so that way you're ensuring you're not getting liquid refrigerant back to your compressor. That's the biggest thing. So if you have 0 degrees superheat at your compressor, you're flooding liquid back to that compressor. So you need some sort of superheat. Obviously at the evaporator, coming back to the compressor is typically going to be really high. Now, if you have, a super low superheat at your compressor, you got some serious issues, because typically you're going to have a lot of heat gain on the suction line from the evaporator to the compressor, because that silly insulation we use on the copper lines is not really that great. So you're typically going to have, I think Copeland wants like what, 20 something degrees superheat minimum at the compressor, I think is what they say. I think, if I remember right off the top of my head. So let me cross that question off my list. So when I do these live streams, I typically go through my emails and my YouTube comments, and I just find questions that look interesting, and I put them on my list of things to talk about. So if you guys do have a question and I miss it, shoot me an email. I'll generally throw it into the live stream for the next one. So let's see what else. Do I prefer heated diode or infrared leak detectors, and why? I've used both. They have both worked for me in different instances. Right now, I'm using, which one am I using? I'm using the Fieldpiece DR82. Hold on just a sec. DR82. I got to remember what kind of leak detector that is. And I don't even remember. I think that's a infrared leak detector, actually. Let me see. But I have used the DR82 is the infrared leak detector. That's the one I've been using for a while. On another note, though, someone had asked me in the chat, or no, someone had emailed me or something. They were asking me a question about the Fieldpiece leak detector, or if I thought they needed to buy the Infocon Stratus leak detector. It really depends on what you're working on. Now, personally, if I was to buy a leak detector, now I own the Stratus and I own the Fieldpiece, and they both are pretty neck and neck as far as performance that I've used them for. The Stratus is a bit overkill for what I do personally, because it has the cloud hunting function. In light commercial refrigeration, we typically don't need the cloud hunting function. You typically just need the standard leak detector. So if I was to encourage someone to buy a Infocon leak detector, I would probably, for the money, if you're doing light commercial, I would probably suggest you buy the Detect 3, which still has the same sensor in it as the Stratus. It just doesn't have the cloud hunting function. So that's what I would say to do. You can save yourself a couple bucks. But I'm a fan of the Fieldpiece. Now, I will say something that I found out recently with the Stratus, and I've yet to order it, but I'm going to order it. Apparently with the Stratus, you can change the sensors for CO2 and or for hydrocarbon refrigerants or flammable refrigerants. So I'm going to order the sensor for the Stratus for the flammable refrigerants, and I'm going to give that a try, because currently I have a Infocon GasMate. I'm not a huge fan of that leak detector, so I'd like to see how the Stratus does with the hydrocarbon refrigerants when you have the flammable refrigerant or the hydrocarbon sensor in it. So I'm definitely going to order that and try that out. But I thought that was really cool, because theoretically you could have one leak detector in your truck and do normal refrigerants and or hydrocarbon refrigerants. And if you wanted to deal with the CO2 stuff, you can put the CO2 sensor in there. So I really like that there's all these manufacturers doing these different tools, because it makes competition and they're all trying to outbid each other and make better tools. And we as the service techs get to benefit from it all. So let's see what else. What's my opinion on the H10? Nathaniel Hedge, never used the H10 in my life. I know there is a lot of people that swear by the H10, and I'm sure it's an amazing leak detector. I just personally have never used it, so don't really have anything. Let's see. Let's see. I was measuring superheat from the evaporator. It looked like it was from the box. Yeah, that would have been superheat from the evaporator, Chris. So yeah, I'm going to aim for the same superheat in any kind of a walk-in cooler or freezer. You know, whatever I would use with 404, I'm going to use for R22, 448A, or insert name of whatever refrigerant here. We're going to aim for the same superheat typically. The superheat is going to be based off of your evaporator TD basically. So, and you want to make sure that your expansion valve sized right. And you know, adjusting the superheat higher or lower is going to affect the evaporator TD. Is going to affect how cold the evaporator coil gets, how much humidity it removes, and or how much it actually humidifies the air. So, well, I guess it wouldn't humidify the air, but how much it doesn't dehumidify the air. So keep that in mind. Engineers typically size their equipment that way. So let me see what else we got going on in here. Looking through the chat right now. Do I prefer? I already answered that question. How do I feel about Testo products? Honestly, hold on. Got a few Testo smart probes. I just saw them down in my drawer. One thing I do appreciate about the 605i, this is their hygrometer, I think is what they call it, hydrometer, or whatever you want to call it. I do appreciate that it folds and it's compact, but honestly, I've never used it. I bought it for a video and then just never really used it anymore. So I probably need to start using it. But I mean, it's a nice little stout, you know, pretty durable probe. These are a bit big for me. Kind of get in the way in my opinion, and it's just like a thermocouple, thermistor, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I like the Jobling probes myself. Cyborg Chic, thank you very much for that super chat. That is amazing, bud. That's much appreciated. So something I wanted to talk about too is in the chat, it was asked before the live stream, what's my least favorite equipment to work on? And I think that as far as types of equipment that I work on would be cold rails, right? So, or cold wraps. A lot of refrigeration manufacturers will have them, and it's typically a static cold rail. So it's refrigeration lines ran behind a piece of metal. The customers put pans in them, and it works off of convection, right? The heat transfers. And the thing that I don't like about cold rails, pan chillers, whatever you want to call them, depending on the manufacturer, I really dig the Hvacr ones. Hvacr has it down. In my opinion, hands down, Hvacr has the best pan chiller, best cold rail, whatever you want to call it. Their blue technology is on point for maintaining temperatures. The downside to the Hvacr blue technology is that it takes forever to come down to temperature. But once it comes down to temperature, like it maintains that temp flawlessly unless there's problems. So, but on other cold wraps, the static cold wraps that do not have evaporator fan motors, honestly, they work if they're used properly, but most of the customers don't understand and don't know how to use them and or don't listen when you explain it to them. So when you're working on a static cold rail and they just have pans in there, you need to have every pan. There can't be any gaps. The pans can't be bent. The pans need to be perfect. And then on top of that, you can't overfill the food. You typically don't want the pan filled more than halfway with food. Something that customers don't understand is most reach-in coolers and cold rails for sure are never meant to bring product temperature down. So you can't put warm product in a cold rail and or a reach-in cooler. They're meant to maintain product temperature. So you get the cold product from the walk-in cooler, you put it in the reach-in cooler, and it maintains the temp for a while, but it's never really meant to bring product down. I get customers all the time that misuse their equipment and don't understand how it's supposed to work. So if I had to pick one piece of equipment that I like, or least like to work on, it's going to be cold rails, just because the customer doesn't understand how to use them. Most of the time, like on a Delfield cold rail, they're not meant to leave any product in them overnight. And the complaints that you'll get from the customer is it never maintains temp during the day, but then when they leave product in it overnight, the product freezes, and because it's not meant to be left in overnight. You're supposed to defrost them every night, wipe them down, start them up in the morning, put cold product in them, and it's just meant as a holding station for 40-degree product, and it's going to maintain that temp. And actually, if you read Delfield's instructions for their cold rails, their static cold rails, it actually says to rotate the food every 4 hours. So they're actually not even meant to keep food in it for more than 4 hours. That's how much they tell you they're not meant to maintain product for that long. They want you to rotate the food, which that's a whole contamination issue, so customers can't rotate food. But oftentimes the end user doesn't understand that, right? They're sold by an equipment salesman that says this works perfect. Nobody reads the instructions. Nobody knows how to use it. And then the refrigeration guy's there on a Friday night trying to figure out why the food's at 50 degrees. So, you know, those are my least favorite ones to work on for sure. All right, let's get to the chat, see what I'm missing in here. Let me see. You're a testo guy. Send it your way, Jason Johnson. I bet you are, my friend. I bet you are. Let's see. Play with that little... Okay, so is that shirt available on my website? Might be. Yeah, man. I'm wearing the shirt right now. HVACR videos, and then you flip it around. So that shirt, this hat, another shirt design. We have women's shirts in this design right here. They're a V-neck. We have sweatshirts. We have beanies. They're all available on my website, hvacrvideos.com. We have all the merch here. My wife packages it. We ship it out. So it's a great way to support the channel. Keeps my wife busy doing stuff. So, well, I shouldn't say keeps my wife busy. My wife is probably busier than me, by the way, right? I got to give credit where credit's due. She's running around all day long, dealing with the kids, taking them to school, dropping them off, different schools, grocery shop. Like, my wife is amazing. If you guys don't follow her on social media, on Instagram, it's at HVACRwife. She posts periodically about how we do things. I was going to try to get her on the live stream today, but it just didn't work out. So, let's see. Right on, Cyborg Sheep, man. I just saw your super chat come through again. Thanks so much, man. That's awesome. I appreciate that super chat, and it was cool talking with you on the Overtime show. So if you guys don't know, HVAC Overtime on YouTube, we do a show on Friday evenings. And this last week, we're going to do it every once in a while, not every week. We brought a bunch of people on, and we had like a hangout. Actually, it went well after the show ended. I think they were on there. I got off, but I think they were on there for at least another hour or so, just talking and hanging out and you know, just whatever. So, let me see. Let's see what else we got in the chat right now. Logo tattoo. No logo tattoo, but we do have these coming soon. These will be available on the website very soon. Making a few changes, but they'll be up there soon, and we'll be shipping those out, stickers. So how do I feel about new Calgon products versus Viper? Gabriel Lopez. So I've been a user of Viper, and they actually sponsor my channel, but at the same time, in all fairness, if you go look at I started having sponsors, Sporlan and Field Piece. Well, Field Piece has never been a sponsor. I've just worked with them on projects. But Refrigeration Technologies and Sporlan have always, you know, been sponsors of, or not always, but they've been sponsors of my content for at least 2 years now. And before that, though, the previous 2 years before that, I was still promoting their products, using them, advertising them even before they were paying me anything, right? I love their products in general. Okay. The Refrigeration Technologies products, they're safe. You know, there's thought that goes into them, and I appreciate them very much. Now, I love using their products. They're local to me. They're a local business in California. John Pastorello, Mike Pastorello run the business. John Pastorello's the founder. He's the chemist. Mike Pastorello's his son. Both great people, and they are just the nicest people. You know, Mike Burke is the sales guy. Just great people. Every time I go into their shop, they're just so welcoming, so nice. They want to talk. They want to shake my hands. Every time you see them at trade shows, they're the nicest people. They're just great people. So yes, I do love Refrigeration Technologies products for sure. Have I ever worked on shrouds? Are you talking about like Josh Howell? I used to do some shroud work a long time ago. I used to do work for Applebee's, and they had cold rails, and then they had a shroud on the top, a refrigerated shroud above it that had a cold wrap, and then they had like a fan in there circulating air across the top of the food, and then they had a cold wrap down below. So I don't know if that's the type of shroud that you're talking about. Have I ever, let's see. Bloody Shot HVACR. Yeah, I do remember meeting you at HR too. That's awesome, bud. Did Bill ever send me the gifts you sent him to give to me, guys? Probably not, eh? Hamilton, I didn't see anything from Bill, man. You best be asking Bill what you were supposed to send me, because I didn't get crap. Have I tried the Testo leak detector? Nope. Let me see what else we got going on in here. All right. They don't defrost them. The ice build, you can store only one French fry in it. Oh, so jury refrigeration. You're talking about the cold rails. Yeah, exactly. The customers, they don't ever defrost them. The ice starts to build. It acts as an insulator. You all know that ice is going to be at 32 degrees. Then the customer wonders why the box doesn't work. Well, it's all encapsulated in ice. And they're like, well, but that should be great. No, it shouldn't, because on the Delfield cold rails, they get down to 17 degrees where the pans are at, right? It doesn't get the product to 17, but the air or the cold rail down below the pans is 17 degrees. That way it can have quick heat transfer. So if you have 32 degrees and you're trying to maintain 40 degrees in a pan, there's not enough of a temperature differential there for heat transfer to happen fast enough, and your product's not going to maintain proper product temperature. So yeah, there can't be a massive amount of ice buildup. There can be light frost around the cold rail, but that's it. All right, let's get to the chat. Yeah, Mike B, it's really hard to get a lot of the supply houses to carry the Refrigeration Technologies products because they're so in deep with the other manufacturers. If you can't find them at your local supply house, definitely check out TrueTechTools.com. They have all the Refrigeration Technologies products, and you can get a cool discount using my offer code BIGPICTURE, one word. You'll get an 8% discount on checkout, yeah, that's a great way too. So. If a package unit does not have a liquid line service port, how do you get subcooling, Mr. Green? You have to make some guesstimations there based off of the different type of equipment. So I typically know that on carrier package units that have fixed orifice metering devices, you're typically going to have about a 30 degree, 35 degrees sometimes pressure drop from discharge to liquid line pressure. So you can kind of do the math there. Lennox package units, typically if I see about 16 degrees subcooling on a Lennox package unit using discharge pressure, it's usually on point once you get onto the liquid line port. So, you just got to kind of do some guesstimations. Obviously, weigh in the charge is the best way, and then take your vitals. If you're ever going to be working on a unit that doesn't have a liquid line service port and you have the refrigerant out at a liquid line service port, it'll help you, in charging it. But best way to charge a package unit is to weigh the refrigerant charge in. The only reason why I'm checking subcooling is if I'm coming through on a PM or a customer's complaining and I'm just going to check the vitals without recovering the charge, I'll look at the subcooling and see how the system's operating. Let me see. Let's see what we got going on in here. Worst ice machine. You hate Scotsman terribly. Harvest cycles and evap coils. It's not so much that I hate Scotsman or Isomatic or Manitowoc or Hoshizaki or whatever. What I find is that I'm very comfortable with Manitowoc Hoshizaki ice machines. I used to be really comfortable with the Fullet countertops because I used to do a lot of work, but I don't work on a lot of Fullets anymore, right? And I recently worked on a Fullet and I was lost. I was like, what the heck? What's going on? It's really, I think, about what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable working on Hoshizaki, you're going to tend to call those your favorite. Then if you get thrown an Isomatic, you're like, wait a minute, how does this work? You're kind of scratching your head. So I think it's more or less just about what you're comfortable working on. So because I'll get emails from like homeowners sometimes, what kind of air conditioner should I buy? And I'll get an email from a restaurant owner, what ice machine should I buy? And I would always tell them, it really depends on who you're going to have service your equipment and how comfortable they are working on that piece of equipment. So I always tell people, you need a contractor that you trust, and what are they comfortable working on? Because that's what you really want to buy. You don't want to buy an ice machine that nobody in your area knows how to work on, because you're going to have a heck of a time when it breaks down, getting someone to properly service it. All right. So, I had a video, I already covered that one. I'm just crossing off my list of things that I've already talked about. So I had a video a while back. It was a walk-in freezer condenser, and it was one of these, I don't know if you guys remember it. I was way out in the desert, and I went out there, and it had a bad evaporator fan motor. And then I ended up having to have another technician bring me the evaporator fan motor, and while I was waiting for that, I started checking other things, and I found a bad contactor, a defrost clock, and then I think we even changed a condenser fan motor. We cleaned the condenser, and then in the end, we found out that the head pressure control valve wasn't working right. So anyways, the viewer said, in a comment that, I threw way too many parts at that before I knew what was wrong with it. Okay. So, first off, I want people to understand when I post things or when I react to someone, right? Recently I pinned someone's comment because it was an ignorant comment. I'm not taking offense. I don't get my feelings hurt typically from a comment. I usually, like, if I pin a comment, it's because I want other people to see how ignorant this person is, right? So in this particular thing, this guy said he thought I threw too many, and I don't think he was being rude. I just, you know, and I'm not taking offense to it. So I don't want people to think that I'm getting affected by these comments. I'm not. I usually like to try to educate people as much as possible. So in that particular video, yes, it was a one thing leads to another, but you have to understand the circumstances of which I was in, and you have to understand that the particular customer that I was working for needed that equipment fixed. It needed to be operating. Okay, bottom line. No matter what was wrong with it, I had to fix it that night. Even if I had to change a compressor, it was going to be fixed that night. When it comes to walk-in freezers and walk-in coolers, we have to get it running. It needs to operate. You've got $30,000 worth of food in there. A $5,000 repair, $6,000 repair, $15,000 repair is nothing in comparison to losing all their food. Okay? So bottom line, I have to triage the equipment. I have to get it running as best as possible. And then I may make a recommendation. In that situation, I made a recommendation to change the equipment. Now, the customer hasn't changed it yet, but I'm sure they will eventually. Okay. So, but yeah, I don't get offended by the comments, but sometimes if they're ignorant or they're dumb comments, I will pin them or make an example out of them so that, you know, they can realize they were incorrect. You know, in this particular situation, this guy that said he thought I threw too many parts, he wasn't wrong. I mean, from an outsider looking in without context, yeah, it looked like I threw a lot of parts at that. And I will agree that was one that I rather wish I wouldn't have done all that to. But in hindsight, there's not much you can do. You know, I mean, I was there to fix it. I couldn't proceed any further with checking the refrigeration system when I had an evaporator fan motor that was bad. I couldn't diagnose anything until I got that fan motor in there, and I didn't have it with me, and I was an hour and a half from civilization. So I was better off cleaning that equipment and doing what I could while I was waiting for someone else to bring me parts. So again, understand there's always a reason why people are doing things. And, you know, yeah, I put it on YouTube, and yeah, I'm opening myself up for criticism, and I'm okay with criticism. I really am. But there's always reasons as to why, and maybe I'm not being vocal as to all the reasons as to why I did certain things. So, you have to regularly clean ice machines or you will have problems, guaranteed. And that is an absolute 100% true statement. Ice machines need to be serviced at least on a quarterly level. If you're not servicing your ice machine at least on a quarterly level, you are going to have issues. Now, will it work? Yes, but the scale buildup will eventually become to the point that you can't clean it off anymore. And then you're going to have to resort to scraping things and scrubbing things. And if you actually read the installation instructions from any ice machine manufacturer out there, they tell you not to use anything abrasive when you're cleaning their ice machines. You can use a nylon brush. That is it. They don't want you using Scotch-Brite. They don't want you using metal scrapers or anything like that. And if you're having to use metal scrapers, that typically means that the customer has gone so long without a preventative maintenance that there's not much you can do. But when you do use a metal scraper or abrasive pads, now I'll still use Scotch-Brite pads, just mild, right? But if you're using scrapers, you're actually making very, very fine microscopic grooves in the metal that bacteria can grow in, that makes it almost impossible to properly clean. So that's why they don't want you to use scrapers, brush, you know, like wire brushes or anything like that. But if the customers aren't maintaining their equipment, what are you supposed to do? You know, in walk-in coolers and freezers, would I prefer copper condensation lines or PVC? Copper, Gabriel. I prefer not to use PVC on anything in a restaurant because it will get broken. If it can, it will. I can understand in a K store, you know, a gas station, convenience store using PVC because you know what? The gas station owner isn't in and out of that box 500 times a day. But in a restaurant, they are literally, it's absolutely a certainty that if a restaurant has a walk-in cooler, I don't care what you think, they're going to use it as a reach-in cooler. They're going to be in and out of it all day long. They're going to be pushing pans in places they shouldn't, you know, so copper drain lines is my preferred method of condensation drain lines for air conditioners and refrigerators, copper lines. The reason why I don't like PVC, they get broken. Ice machines for PVC drains for ice machines, the customers break them underneath the bin with squeegees. And for those of you that have done this, you tell me how easy it is to cut a piece of PVC drain line off and put a new T on underneath a Hoshizaki bin that's only 6 inches from the ground and it's 4 feet deep. It's a nightmare. It's an ugly nightmare. It looks like crap when you get that 90 put back on there because the customer broke it off with a squeegee, okay? So I prefer not to use PVC whenever possible. It's just not a fan of it. Let me see what I got going on my phone right now. Oh, good gosh, man. All right. Have I ever used a steamer like a VX 5000 to clean an ice machine? No, Sean, I've never used a steamer. I've heard people telling me about them. I haven't had an opportunity to use one. I'd probably like to get my hands on one day, but I don't know. It just hasn't been a priority for me. So let's see what else we got going on in here. Okay. This is a question I get so much, guys. How do my customers react to me filming on their sites? Good question. Okay, first and foremost, I'm very discreet about filming on my customers' locations, okay? I do have approval from my restaurants to film, but it's not approval from everybody in the restaurant, if that makes sense, okay? You have to understand something. I want to protect my customers as much as possible. So I have verbal approvals, but there's never, ever going to be anything in writing that says I can film, because that's just a liability for restaurants. But another thing to understand too, I am a little bit messed up in the head, okay? And when I troubleshoot things, I talk to myself. I talk out loud. That's how my troubleshooting process is. So what you hear me doing in my videos is literally how I troubleshoot when I don't have a video being on. Ask any of my employees. They'll tell you I talk to myself all day long. People constantly saying, what? From across the room. I'm not talking to you. What? I'm not talking to you. Like, I talk to myself out loud and I answer questions, and that's how I work my way through troubleshooting. So what I'm doing on my videos is no different than my normal troubleshooting process. So yes, my customers do know. The easy answer is yes, they do know that I'm filming. But it's just one of those things, you know, you just still got to be careful. I don't ever show my customers' locations. I do my best. Now, I know some of you know the places that I work at because you might work in the same locations, but we always try to protect my customers. I'm going to tell all of you guys this too. If any of you post anything on social media, any of that stuff, don't ever include restaurant names, grocery store names, business names. I don't even care if you're working at that job site. If you're walking through, you can be in trouble for talking about a grocery store because you see something funky and you name the grocery store just in a simple social media post, okay? They will get lawyers involved and they will get that taken down, and your channel will get in trouble. So you always want to be careful. Always protect your customers, protect restaurant names, customers, different things. So that way, you know, it doesn't put you in a position where you're going to get in trouble, basically, okay? So on an R290 freezer a while back, I had a Delfield R290 freezer, and the customer said that during the day it wouldn't work right. And when I went out there, it was down to temperature when I got there. And I was like, huh, you know, and I made a video showing me go through the process. Now, one of the things that I did in the video was an R290 freezer is I walked up and I said, you know, it's working right now. I took all the food out of it, moved it in the back of the kitchen, and I went through the operations, just kind of checking everything. It did not have pressure ports, so I just took some temperature checks, and I said, I think it's working okay, but I did a leak search on the system. Why would I waste time doing a leak search if it was temping okay? And the reason why was because there was an intermittent issue. When I was there, the customer said it wasn't working during the day, but it was working right now. So my first instinct, because there was no pressure ports, was, hey, it'll take me 2 seconds to shut the unit off and do a quick leak search to see if there was a potential leak. I'm saving myself time when I had the unit off because I was trying to troubleshoot an intermittent issue and I didn't have service ports. Now, yes, I could have added service ports, but I didn't want to necessarily have to do that if there was nothing wrong. Now, that video was from a couple months ago, and I have yet to get another service call on that freezer. What actually ended up being the problem, because I didn't find any leaks and it came down to temperature really fast, was it came down to how the customer was storing product. They were storing tons and tons of bags of, I believe, French fries on the top shelf, and their complaint was the bottom wasn't working. Well, they were blocking off the airflow to the bottom of the freezer, okay? But again, it was my troubleshooting process. Same thing. If I'm working on a reach-in cooler, walk-in cooler, anything like that, if I have an opportunity and I'm opening up the evaporator to do something, if I see anything that looks like it might be a leak, I'm going to bust out my leak detector and give it a shot real quick, okay? Because I'm trying to save myself time in the long run. All right, let's see what else. I'm reading through the chat. What do I think about topping off an R290 system? I will not top off R290 systems. First off, there's a couple reasons. Number one, you got some liability issues, okay? R290 is a flammable refrigerant. You don't want it you know, leaking out and running at the same time. Now, if it's just leaking out in the kitchen, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's in such a small concentration in a huge kitchen full of oxygen, carbon dioxide. It's going to get diluted in the air. So I'm not worried about the refrigerant per se, but the reason why I don't leave it running when it has a leak is because if you have refrigeration compressors and fan motors and relays and different things, you have more of a potential for an issue inside that reach-in cooler, okay? The next thing, most of the time, R290 coolers do not have pressure controls. So if the system has a leak and you top it off, there's the potential that it can run out of gas and then run with no pressure controls to protect the compressor. So I'm also protecting the compressor. So if I come across an R290 system that is leaking, I will typically disable the system, lock it out, take the cord off, put it away, put the panels back on the box so that way the customer can't even attempt to plug it in. If you ever are working in a restaurant, if it can happen, it will happen. So if you simply just unplug something and wrap electrical tape around the cord, the cooks will unwrap the electrical tape and plug it back into the wall. So make the cord disappear. Put it in the reach-in cooler. Do what you have to do to make sure that nobody can plug that thing in. Let's see. Oh, that's something I wanted to cover. So I did have a somewhat rude comment from someone telling me, it was like a snarky comment talking about, ooh, an HVAC guy is going to give family time talk or something like that because I posted about on social media about spending time with my family. Okay, first and foremost, I have never followed any sort of a correct path with my YouTube channel. I am me and I will continue to be me and I will do me, right? Or do my thing. I'm not going to do myself. That'd be kind of weird. Kind of cool too. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. I'm going to always do my kind of thing, right? And if I'm going to be going out, I'm going to be sharing little facts that I think are important to share on my channel. So yes, I do HVAC content, but yes, I posted a picture of my kids shopping, you know, with my wife, joking around. Like, I like to show people that I'm a real human, right? Because we're all the same and we all need to be spending time with our family. I have my wife on the live stream or on videos sometimes talking about how we deal with things. This is how I run my channel. If you don't like it, move on to another channel. I could care less, okay? Because I do have people that value this content and I'm going to keep making the content the way that I want to make it. It is what it is. So you're free to move on to wherever else you want to go. All right. Have you ever recovered gas from an RTU carrier, found it to be low on gas, leak searched and pressure tested and didn't find the leak? And I see a bunch of people down below screaming where the leak's at. Steven, yes, I have done that. Okay. Number one, it could be that someone let refrigerant out of the unit. It could be that someone didn't charge it, right? There's always that weird instance. A lot of the times on carrier package units, if it does have a refrigerant leak, it will be at the CoreMax fittings. A CoreMax is a high flow Schrader type fitting, but unlike a standard Schrader that you can remove with a vacuum core removal tool, you can't remove the CoreMax fittings without a special tool. It's made by JB Industries. I don't know the part number, but you can get it at the supply house. It's like $300 or $400. But you can't remove it to evacuate a system like a vacuum core removal tool or anything like that. Okay. So, key point. If I suspect an air conditioner has a refrigerant leak, I typically will leak check the Schrader ports before I put my gauges on it. Okay. Again, trying to think ahead because it is possible. Now, I don't like it when people call me, when my texts call me and say, yeah, I couldn't find a leak. It must be at the Schrader port. I don't like that because I want people to prove that it's at the Schrader port, right? So if I'm walking up to an air conditioner and I can see signs of oil around the Schrader fittings, I'm going to grab my leak detector. I'm going to take the cap off and I'm going to leak check the Schrader before I put my gauges on it. Because oftentimes you can put your gauges on it and it's going to solve the leak and then you're not going to be able to find anything. And then you're going to be in that instance. So always look, if you're working on a carrier unit, always look at the high flow Schraders. Those are very common to leak. If you're just topping off the charge, you can put a swivel tee on one of them. If you have the fancy tool like I do, you can remove the core, put a new one in while it still has refrigerant in it. You just can't do an evacuation on it. So anytime I open up a system on something that has high flow Schraders, if I have to change a dryer, if I have to change a compressor, it's one of those things. I just change the high flow Schraders. You don't need the tool to change them if you don't have refrigerant in the system. You just 2 crescent wrenches, pop it off, it unscrews, and you put a new one on. So I do that preventatively if I'm ever working on them because the leak rate on those high flow Schraders is intense. It's through the roof. So, all right, let's see what else we got going on in here. Anyone make a DIY Cormax remover? Would love that. Yeah, it's not really going to happen, but you're not going to find something that's refrigerant leak proof that you're going to have to remove a Schrader on. It's just not going to happen. It's called your tubing cutters. There you go, Jason Johnson. I have taken Cormax tees out, unsweat them, and put in a brass access fitting in place of them. Yes, I've done that several times. So let's see what else. Yes, Cormax Huseman says Cormax often gets pushed to one side and leak, and that's very common. What can happen, there's actually a tool out there called a high flow Schrader core depressor. Okay, you can buy it from AccuTools. Yellow Jacket, I think, makes it. And what it is, no, it's actually just from AccuTools. I think they had it custom made. It's not from Yellow Jacket. But all it is a little fitting that depresses the Schrader to make sure it gets pushed all the way down so you can pull a better vacuum. Now, on those, what you will find is if you depress those Schrader core depressors, the high flow ones, all the way down, you'll actually damage the Cormax fitting. They're not meant to really be pushed all the way down, so be very cautious about that. That's what, in my experience, what I find that damages them a lot. So we didn't cover this yet. So I had someone asking me, and I mentioned it in a recent video, subcooling when you're working on a package unit. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to address it a little bit more. So when you're working on a package unit and you need to get subcooling, but you only have a discharge port, when you're working on air conditioning, you need to understand that there is going to be a pressure drop across the condenser. Now, you're typically not going to see much of a pressure drop across older tube and fin refrigeration condensers, but you will start to see pressure drops across some of the new AWEF style condensers because they're doing some weird stuff with sizing and pressure drops. But just be understanding that sometimes you will see a pressure drop, okay, especially on air conditioning equipment. And that pressure drop means that there's going to be a change. So for instance, I mentioned earlier that on Linux package units, typically, if the system's charged right, I will typically see about 16 degrees subcooling across using the discharge port. But if you put your pressure probe on the liquid line port, it'll be about 10 degrees subcooling, okay? So it's really about understanding what each manufacturer is doing. There's no rule of thumb that's going to go across the board. You can't just assume that it's going to be a 30 PSI pressure drop across every air conditioning condenser because each manufacturer beats to the tune of their own drum. And there is no set standard for air conditioning or refrigeration. Everybody kind of just does their own thing. So you need to be familiar with the equipment you're working on. In a recent video, I was working on an air conditioner. I think it was Sunday's video. And I said that the discharge temperature was kind of high, and it was 175 degrees. Now, I had a valid question. Why in the heck did I think 175 degrees was high for a discharge temperature, right? Because Copeland recommends that your discharge temperature be below 225 degrees. 225 degrees, about 8 to 10 inches away from the actual discharge of the compressor. Now, something to understand is the actual internal temperature in that compressor and down in the oil sump is much higher, or actually up in the head of the compressor is much higher than 225 degrees. But the best that Copeland has been able to estimate is that if you have 225 or lower, the internal of the compressor will be okay for the most part, okay? But if it's over 225, then what you can do is you could be overheating the internals of that compressor and you're gonna have oil breakdown. So with that being said, why did I say 175 degrees was high? Well, I said that because the condenser fan motors were not running, and I knew that that was abnormal. Once I got the condenser fan motors running on that unit, the discharge line temperature dropped like 20 degrees, okay? So it was more or less me saying there was no outdoor load. I didn't think that we should have a 175 degree discharge temp on that particular one. But I do not have a set standard or a correlation that I know in the top of my head of outdoor air temperature versus discharge temperature, surface temperature. I don't have that number. I just was kind of using my experience saying I think that's kind of high. Again, understand something. When I'm making my videos, I'm not necessarily talking to you. I'm talking to myself, and I'm just videotaping my thought process. So there's times that, yes, I do make a point to say something so that way you guys will understand it. But there's often times, too, that you're literally just hearing my rationalization in my own words of how I'm getting through this service call. Because, again, like I said earlier, When I'm making my videos, I'm literally talking to myself just like I would be if I wasn't making a video. I know I'm insane. I know I've got mental problems, but that's how I troubleshoot. Okay. Is interesting. And I do kind of agree with this. My buddy Clive Mitchell, Big Clive, he'll come on the Overtime show and stuff like that. And he made a comment a long time ago, and it kind of rings true to me. He said something along the lines of, he would argue that majority of technically minded people are somewhat autistic, maybe just slightly on the spectrum. And I would kind of agree that a lot of technically minded people, right, have some sort of other people would call a abnormal pattern in their head, whether you call that autism, ADHD, who knows, right? I mean, but if you think about it, most technically minded people, like think about Elon Musk, right? I believe he's autistic, right? Isn't he? Yeah, I think he is. And he's one of the smartest people that there is, right? So, sometimes we have a hard time, with certain social interactions. We may sacrifice certain things for, being more technically minded or something. So I'm not trying to say I'm special or anything like that. I'm just saying that, I know that there's something there. And I kind of agree with what Clive had said, that, a lot of technically minded people might be slightly on the spectrum. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think one of the things that we've learned over the years, when we were younger, when I was younger, there was a word retarded, right? And yeah, it's kind of become more of a slang word than anything. But I mean, that was basically a blanket statement for anybody that was not what society called normal, right? It was some sort of retardation or whatever, right? And, it doesn't really mean what it used to mean anymore, but that was just a blanket term. And now we actually have names for it. ADHD, you actually do have some sort of a behavioral disability or something like that. But we all have different vague terms that we use. It is what it is. I think everybody's normal. I think that, the important thing to understand is we're all different from each other. We really are. And we're all individuals. We're not going to all be the same. There's no way in heck. So anyways, now that I've ranted about that, talk about going off on a tangent, huh? Yeah, exactly. HVAC Misadventures says, just tell people you're having a staff meeting if they look at me funny. That's a good point. That is a really good point, actually. I will take that one time. I'll be like, I'm having a staff meeting with myself. Let's see. Jose Durazo is saying, isn't it better to use approach than a pressure target? Lennox actually recommends on their package units that you actually use the approach temperature. They don't publish subcooling numbers. So approach temperature is an ass-backwards way of looking at subcooling. It's liquid line surface temperature compared to outdoor ambient air entering temperature, right? The air entering the condenser and the liquid line surface temperature, and you're going to get an approach temperature. I think they typically want like 6 to 8 degrees approach, I think is what Lennox wants. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but yeah, that's another way too. Okay. So let me see what else we got going on in here. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Why capillary tubes clog so easy? I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Lizaraga? Edgar? Edgar, I'll say Edgar, okay. So why do capillary tubes plug so easily? Well, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you, majority of the time, what you will see plugged capillary tubes is actually going to be with R134A refrigerant. And it's not necessarily the refrigerant's fault. It's the polyester oil in the system, okay? And it's the customer not properly maintaining their equipment. That's the main reason why capillary tubes plug up. Again, we're talking about compressor discharge temperature, something that we don't really talk about on small scale reach-in coolers that typically have capillary tubes, okay? If you run high discharge temperatures on the compressor, remember 225 max is what Copeland wants on about 6 to 10 inches away from the discharge of the compressor. If you're running higher than 225 degrees, inside the compressor is much, much higher, and it'll start to break down the oil. So on 134A systems that have polyester oil in them, a lot of the times in the mid-90s to early 2000s, that was the refrigerant flavor of choice for every refrigerator out there. And we were seeing plugged up capillary tubes like crazy, but it was all mainly because the customers were not maintaining their equipment. In a perfect world, a customer has someone come out and rinse their condenser once a month to make sure that there's no dust and lint buildup. Once a month. Okay. But nobody does that. Not anymore. In the, a long time ago, yeah, I used to have customers that would have me do PMs once a month, but even still, we weren't able to get to every single piece of equipment. But it's really about overheating the condenser, breaking the oil down in the compressor, and then that oil travels. When the oil breaks down, when polyester oil breaks down, just think of bacon grease. That's what happens, okay? It coagulates kind of like bacon grease and gets super thick, and then it plugs up the lines. So that's why you tend to see plugged up capillary tubes so much, okay? It's because the equipment's not being properly maintained, the discharge temp's way too high, and it's damaging the oil inside the compressor. Why do I not use insert name of R22 replacement, new 22, 422D, 458A, all these different refrigerants, okay? The reason why I don't use them, I'm not against using an alternative for R22. I just haven't found one that my customers have wanted me to use. But I don't like having 50 billion refrigerants on my van. I'm a refrigeration guy already, and I have way too many refrigerants in my van. I have R290, 448A, R22, 404A, 134A, 410A, okay? And am I missing one? I don't think so. I think that's all the ones that I have on my van. I don't have any more space for another refrigerant. So if I'm going to adopt an R22 replacement, I want to be one R22 replacement. Now, I had a bunch of people in my recent video say, well, why don't you use 422D or Bluon or all these different ones because you don't need an oil change? It's because I don't want to have a bunch of different flavors of refrigerant, and I bring it up to my customers. I say, do you want to use alternatives? Here's the things we have to go through. And I'm going to argue with something right now. If you go to almost any, there's maybe two of them that don't say it. I don't think Bluon says it, and I think Bluon's the only one, actually, to be honest with you. If you go to MO99, if you go to 422D, if you go to any name of R22 refrigerant replacement besides Bluon that I know of, if you read the installation instructions, it will say down in the bottom in fine print, works best with polyester oil. But there'll be something in bold print up top that says no oil change necessary. But yet down in the fine print, it will say works best with polyester oil, okay? That's simply because they know that they've probably added a hydrocarbon refrigerant into there, right, to make the oil. Because when they add a hydrocarbon into the R22 replacement, it makes it work better with mineral oil is what it does. And so the oil will travel with the hydrocarbon better. But it works best with polyester oil is what it'll typically say in the fine print. Okay, so best bet is change the oil, replace the compressor, then use something like 407C or one of the other ones. Now, I know there's a bunch of different, I'm going to get a million emails from it, but bottom line, I don't want to have 27 different refrigerants to replace R22. If I'm going to use one, I want it to be one refrigerant across the board, okay? Now, another thing to think about, you do have some capacity losses, but if you're dealing with refrigeration, you got to be careful about the capacity losses. But 448A is actually a replacement for R22. You will have to make some minor system adjustments. You may have to add a temperature responsive expansion valve if your system doesn't already have one because of high discharge temps that 448A runs. But 448A is the new flavor of refrigerant that I am using from this point forward until they start phasing that one out. And they phase another refrigerant out every single day, but 448A is a R22 replacement for refrigeration, not for air conditioning, okay? But you still need to be careful. It doesn't work with mineral oil. It only works with polyester oil. And if you change a system over, change the oil, you're going to have to change a lot of the rubber seals, and there's a lot of best practices you need to do if you're going to be making a conversion like that. So yeah, that answers that question too. Okay, let's get to the chat and see what I'm missing in here. What am I missing? Let's see. What do I think of Packard motors? I mean, I've worked with them before. I don't have a whole lot to say about them. I've worked with them a few times. Nothing bad to say about them, really. MO99 will lead to a new compressor. You know, there's a lot of ups and downs, you know, with people saying different ones. Really, I think it comes down to system installation. And I'm going to throw Bluon a bone. I got to tell you this right now. I don't work with Bluon. I have no affiliation with them. I've had some issues with marketing with them in the past, right? I don't got anything, no bad blood, okay? But I'm going to tell you right now, Bluon is the only refrigerant manufacturer out there, the only that literally tells you how to convert every system over to their refrigerant. I got to give them props for that. Okay. I've never used Bluon, but if you open up their app and you insert the name of the package unit you're working on, it will tell you literally in order to use Blue On in this package unit, you need to do this, this, and this. And it's not always a straightforward. They're not sugarcoating it, okay? They may be telling you to change the expansion valve. They may be telling you to add an expansion valve to a system that has a fixed orifice metering device. So, I mean, I got to give them props, right? They do a great job telling people and being upfront. You want to use our refrigerant, it'll work, but this is what you have to do, okay? So I give them props for that one. All right, I already answered that question. Crossing things off my list. We're doing good right now. I did make a comment in my recent video where I was working on a glycol unit. I made a comment about how I was frustrated about these foreign units and how they didn't have the weight measurement converted. You got to understand something. You know, there was a lot of flack I got in there. And yes, I realized that unit was from Ukraine. I wasn't criticizing Ukrainians, okay? Of course we support them and stuff, right? But I'm just saying in general, that unit was not the highest quality glycol unit, period, okay? So I'm not saying just because it was from Ukraine. And I thought about it after. It doesn't necessarily mean because it wasn't from the US either, because we have stuff made in the United States that's pure crap too, okay? Just in general, that unit was a piece of junk, okay? But one thing that frustrated me about that unit was on the data tag, they gave you the weight in pounds, and it was like a weird ass number. And yes, I know I can convert that over, and I showed it in the video. I asked the Google and it did the conversion for me. But the point I was making is these manufacturers of equipment, air conditioners, refrigerators, ice machines, whatever it is, they need to make this as easy as possible. We technicians have enough crap we have to go through. And I'm a business owner, so I have to think about my technicians going out there and having to do these calculations to figure things out. And it's just silly when they don't put the gram. I mean, if they put grams on the side, that's even easier. And yes, I made the conversion to grams and you know, and it's no big deal. But if they just put it on the side, it would make life so much easier. Literally would not cost them very much, not even a penny more probably in the grand scheme of things, to print grams, ounces, pounds, right? But for someone to put a charge that was 12 ounces and just listed in pounds, that's just dumb. Like, you have to be honest, that is dumb. At least put it in ounces. 12.3 ounces or whatever you're going to put, but to put it just in pounds. And there was some good points made, like another, I don't know what manufacturer this person worked for, but a manufacturer chimed in and said, in the grand scheme of things, you know, I'm paraphrasing what he said, I'm right in that, yeah, that's kind of silly, but really what happened was it probably got lost in translation is all that it was. They were translating it from one metric to another, and it just got lost in there. It is what it is, but the easier they make our jobs, the better we can fix this equipment. So let me see what else we got. Laska says 200 likes for a Testo giveaway. No, I'm not going to do a giveaway, but I will tell you something. I actually do all kinds of giveaways for that stuff. I actually took all those Testo products. I don't really tell people about this stuff, you know, because I don't really do it for the recognition, but I give stuff away all the time. I've had people reach out to me, apprentices and new people in the trade. I don't want to open Pandora's box here, but I've, you know, had people reach out to me and I send them stuff, do all kinds of things like that. So, but I don't really publicize all that crap on the internet. So what's actually made in the US anymore? Really not much. Sporlan dryers, Sporlan expansion valves. Those are still made in the US. Yeah, but I mean, there's not a whole lot really. So it's really more or less quality that I'm concerned about with. And I guess that might have been an ignorant comment when I said these foreign manufacturers, because like Jason said, really, is there really an American manufacturer that truly makes everything here? I mean, majority of the time they're at least getting foreign parts and stuff. So that kind of is an ignorant comment for me to make, to say these foreign manufacturers. More or less, I should have said this crappy manufacturer or the quality of this unit sucks. That would have been a better statement to make for sure. So, but I'm human. Guess what? I screw stuff up all the time. So, can you simply replace R290 with barbecue propane? No, you cannot. But I swear I did it and it works fine. That may be fine, but you cannot, okay? R290 is like 99.9% 99.9 or 98% pure or something like that. R290 is propane, but it is unodorized refrigerant grade propane. It is extremely dry, okay? Propane that you go to the gas station and fill up your refillable barbecue. Ask me how I know from experience. You will find out that that propane is full of water, okay? Now, maybe bad gas station manufacturers, maybe the propane that you get from the Home Depot or whatever is probably different. It's possible, okay? But Propane in general also has an odorant added to it, the barbecue propane. So there's a smell in there, so that way you know when there's a leak. But in refrigerant grade propane, they do not add that odorant. It does not smell like anything, okay? That odorant can act as a potential contaminant. I don't know for sure, but I've been told that it can be a contaminant. So no, we have to use refrigerant grade propane. Now, I've had a bunch of people reach out to me because I was talking about the prices of propane or R290 right now. And they are skyrocketing. R290 is actually more expensive than R22 than when I bought it last week. It's nuts. When you break it down to the per ounce price or do the math and break it down to a per pound price, it's ridiculous how expensive. I think I paid like $68 for a 14-ounce can of R290. So if you do the math, let's just do the math real quick. So if it was 68 divided by 14... so that's 4.86 times 16. So that's $77 a pound, okay, for R290. So 77.76. So we're going to be fair and call it $78 a pound. So $78 a pound. I bought a drum of R22 for $1,400 last week, divided by 30. That is, wait, so 1,400 divided by 30 is 40. That doesn't sound right to me. Is that, no, that doesn't sound right. 1,400. I think I'm doing my math wrong right now. But anyways, do the math yourself. I'm a dummy when it comes to math. But it's ridiculously expensive. So just keep that in mind, okay? Frank asked if oh, okay. So there was a video a long time ago that I changed I had an expansion valve, an EEV that had a bad stator on a Heatcraft QRC system. It had a bad stator, and I mentioned in the video that my supply house only had an entire EEV kit. And then I got a bunch of criticism. You charge the customer for the entire EEV kit, but you only put the stator on. And I said, yeah, I did. Okay. You have to understand something. These customers don't care. I mean, they need their equipment fixed. And if you don't have a stator available, right, because they use Corel valves, and none of my supply houses had just the stator, or what you guys would call a solenoid coil, but it's actually a stator on an EEV. You know, sometimes you have to buy the whole valve. And do I want to waste the customer's money and change out the whole valve when it's just the stator that's bad? Not necessarily. So I saved the valve, left it on the customer's location in case it ever went bad, and I installed the stator. So Joseph Orst, thank you so very much, man. That's an awesome super chat, man. I really, really appreciate that, man. He said, buy some non-piss beer on him. I will do that, Jason. I will do, or Joseph. I'm sorry, bud. I will do that. Let me see. Yeah, I will definitely do that. That was really cool. Thank you very much for that super chat, bud. Why do I not work on rack systems? I'm just not qualified to work on them, and I don't have the staff to work on them. So I'm sure that I can get some training from some buddies, and I can probably work my way through some sort of a minor rack repair. But I also have employees that I would have to train to do so too, and I just don't have interest in doing that. So yeah, wait until everyone starts using R290. It will quadruple. That's why you stock up now when the prices are moderate, so that way you have plenty of stock when the prices go through the roof. See, there's things you can do as a business owner to kind of get ready for these things, right? You stock up when you can. Let me go down here, see what else we got in here. 56 a pound. There you go. So 56 a pound for R22. There you go. And R290 is costing me 78 a pound right now. So do the math. It's more expensive than R22 or R290, I think is what it is. So, no, that's not, no, it's not 78 a pound. No. I see where I did my math wrong. Yeah, he said 56 a pound. It's just a little over $60 a pound for R290 when you do the math. Because I think I said I paid like $65 for a 14-ounce can. So you really only need to add 2 more ounces to that. So, yeah. But anyways, I'm sure someone else can do the math on that too. Let's see. Chris Cooley says he has a 25-pound drum of R290. The 98 DeVille, again, thank you very much for that super chat, man. All that support is awesome. It's much appreciated. So, yeah, there is bigger drums of R290. I'm a little reluctant. I've been very reluctant to buy the bigger drums because they come from eBay, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm still reluctant to buy that stuff. But I know a lot of people swear by it. They buy the stuff from eBay. I don't know. I just still haven't gotten the stomach to buy a drum or refrigerant from eBay. I know it's really cheap, but I'm just like, I don't know. It almost seems too good to be true. Let's see. Yeah, did ADI Plumbing get kicked out? All right. All right. Someone mentioned in my comments. Oh yeah. So my Sunday video, someone mentioned in my comments that the customer only called me out there to fix a thermostat. Why did I go through the rest of the unit? I was wasting the customer's money because they didn't ask me to go through the rest of the unit. Well, again, that is an ignorant comment because you don't know the exact communication between myself and the customer. But I will tell you right now that I'm not there to do a half-ass repair. My customers know that, and they know that I'm thorough. So if I'm there for a thermostat, I'm going to go up onto the roof and I'm going to take a visual on the unit. Now, they don't have to approve any repairs that I tell them they need, but I'm still going to get my eyes on the unit. I'm still going to investigate it. In that situation, the exact conversation was I put a thermostat on it. I went up onto the roof. And I turned off the unit on the roof to change the thermostat. But when I turned it back on, I went through the unit's codes. I saw that it had some codes. I saw that it had loose belts, and I saw that all the condensers were dirty. So then I went down and I emailed the facilities director, the person that's in charge of repairs like that. And I said, hey, are you approving me to go through and get this unit cleaned up and do what I have to do to get it fixed? And he said, yes, go ahead and do it. Again, understand that my videos don't show every single step that I make because I don't have time to spend every single waking minute videoing what I'm doing. I just kind of show certain tidbits of things that I do. Okay. So, all right, let's get to the chat and see what we got going on in the chat, what I'm missing here. Yeah. I'm sorry about my stupid math, trying to figure out all the freaking refrigerant crap. Let me see what we going on in here. Big picture for sure. So document everything and cover yourself in case of a callback. That is right. I love the callbacks when you get to tell them I told you so, right? Because they call you back and say, you just fixed it. And I said, yes, I did just fix it. And you remember all those extra repairs that I have on the invoice right here that you signed that I said you should probably do and you declined them? Bam. Big picture that right there. Boom. Those are the best callbacks ever because it's not a callback and I'm charging you for all my time. So, ignorant comment. That's right. Have I ever used a part from another unit to get a unit temporarily running? Mr. Green, I mean, I'm not going to say that I haven't. I can't really think of something that I'm, right now off the top of my head where I stole a part, but I'm sure I have. I mean, I know I have at some point in my career. I will say that right now, I just sent an email today because I need harvest valves for a Manitowoc Indigo Quiet Cube machine. So it's cool vapor valves or harvest valves. And they are back ordered with no ETA in sight. We're talking months. I've heard months and months before you get these cool vapor valves. And I'm like, what are we supposed to do? I have a restaurant that has an 1,800 pound machine. They only have one. Again, it's their own fault. They used to have two 1,400 pounds, but to save money, they went back with one 1,800 pound. Well, now it's down and they're ordering ice multiple times a day. Oh, here's your sign, right? But I kind of went to the customer and I sent him an email today. Dude, those valves are back ordered with no ETA in sight. You want me to try to Frankenstein this thing? I said it will void all your warranties, but I have a good feeling I can go in there with some Sporlan solenoid valves. I'll have to find the port size and try to get a hold of my contacts at Sporlan and see if they can convert this Danfoss valve over to a Sporlan valve and maybe put that on there and get it going. So I'm contemplating doing some MacGyver stuff here as these part shortages get more and more. We're all going to have to do that. And that's actually what's going to separate the real service technicians from the parts changers too. If you're going to have to start using logic to figure things out and make things work, most of the times the customers don't want that. But in these weird situations, that's going to make you shine if you can get equipment working, as long as the customer signs off on it. Again, document everything. The email that I sent is very detailed. And I want to do that. We've been talking about that on the Overtime show. And, let me see if I can find this email. If I can, and I can just kind of express to you guys how I write communications with customers. I'm very, very careful and meticulous about the way that I write emails out. So I'm going to read this email to you. I said the ice machine at this particular location is down, and the needed parts, the cool vapor harvest valves, are back ordered with no ETA. This is a nationwide issue, and I have exhausted all my resources trying to find the parts. We even called, insert name of certain manufacturer and a person's name that I'm not going to mention, to see if they had a solution, because this company supplies this particular person with these ice machines, and they didn't have a solution either. And I said, so since the restaurant only has one ice machine, The restaurant has no choice but to keep ordering ice. Would you like us to attempt to repair the machine with aftermarket parts? I cannot guarantee it will work, but I do think it's worth a shot, but it will not be covered under the ice machine's warranty, the Manitowoc warranty, what to do, okay? So I have a lot of detail in that email sent to that particular person that covers my butt, that explains my recommendations, but it's consolidated. It's not a book, but it has all the necessary details. And I want to start talking about that more and more, because we've been talking about on the Overtime channel too, is how we write our notes and how we write our job descriptions. It's so important to be thorough and be concise, giving lots of information, but at the same time not giving too much information. And it's not something that can be taught overnight, how to write these kind of notes or these kind of descriptions, but you need to cover your butt when you're doing this stuff too. Okay. So I told them this will not be covered under warranty and I cannot guarantee it's going to work. So they're going to pay for my time of me attempting to fix it, even if it doesn't work. They're paying for it all. Okay. But it's a Hail Mary. We got to try because they have no ETA in sight for these particular harvest valves and this machine will not work without them. So, you know, all right. Let me see. Love to see me MacGyver a train ECM motor. Cyborg Sheep. It's funny because I have a video on a train spaceship. It's a Voyager 2, I think, that has dehumidification, variable capacity compressors, variable speed condenser fan motors, VFDs on the indoor blower motor. This thing is a spaceship. The salesman from Train went crazy selling this to a restaurant that has no need for this complicated unit, right? And they lost a condenser fan motor last June. And I have been dealing with Train back and forth trying to get this dang condenser fan motor. They finally got it, and then guess what? Another branch took it from my order, like pissed me off. And then they finally got another one, and it was damaged, of all things. So I ended up having to MacGyver that thing, and I went and put a temporary condenser fan motor in it. Now, it messes up with the capacity of the unit, and it messes some things up, but I did what I had to do to get the customer operational. So I will MacGyver stuff when I have to, and when and if I ever get that ECM condenser fan motor, I will release the footage because I videoed it all the crap I've gone through. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do in these part shortages to get the equipment going. So do I have my employees harvest from replaced equipment? Not necessarily, Kenneth, but I've considered doing it with these crazy times right now. I've considered harvesting some important key parts from equipment. Yeah, that is something that I would consider doing. So, let me see. 3 months on a harvest valve, Mike B is saying. Yeah, this particular one is longer than 3 months. There was hundreds ordered from what I was told. Let me see. Let me see what else. I'm looking through the chat, seeing what I'm missing. Oh, Jason Johnson says they have some sites with spare equipment for scavenging parts from. That's a good point. You just hopped on. Do I think refrigeration prices will go back down? Mohammed, so I don't know what you call that. I'm the type of person that I don't see the good in things. I typically see the bad in things because you can only be happy. I think you might call that a pessimist. I don't know. I honestly don't see prices going down. I mean, the way that I see things, like everybody keeps saying housing prices are going to go down. Refrigerant prices, equipment prices are going to go down. I highly, highly doubt it. I don't think so. I don't think prices are going to go back down. I think this is the new normal and we're just going to have to adjust and this is just how it's going to be. I could be completely wrong, but I don't see people dropping prices down. Right now, manufacturers are making money, but they're not making money hand over fist. So, you know, I don't see them going down after all this crap. Let's see. And it looks like we got a spam bot in here today. How is that person in here? Because they're supposed to be, I see someone popping up in the chat right now. They're supposed to be gone. Yeah, there you go. That's weird. Let me see what else we got going on in here. Yeah, exactly. Spam bot. You would change the module and the motor, but that's just you. Yeah, I pulled it apart and there was something about the module. I don't think you could get it, to be honest with you. We'll see though. I still have the motor. I saved it all. So let me see what else. Post the ECM video, Chris. Be a two-parter. I don't know. I don't like two-part videos. We'll see. Maybe. All right. Well, guys, it is time for me to wrap this up. I do really appreciate you all coming in here. I think I've ranted enough for a while now. We've been on for about an hour and 15 minutes, I think. So it's that time. I really, really appreciate y'all making it to the end. Remember, Guys, if you want to help support the channel, go to hvacrvideos.com. Website, merchandise available on there. TrueTechTools.com. If you're going to purchase any tools, use my offer code BIGPICTURE. I do get a small commission. You get an 8% discount. It's a win-win, right? There's links in the show notes of other ways to support the channel, but the easiest way to support the YouTube videos is simply watch the video from beginning to end without skipping through anything. Doesn't cost you a dime except for a little bit of your time. So really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to cue up the outro music, and we will catch you on the next one. You guys want to see this beast of a dog? This guy's getting so big. Check this guy out. Look at this guy. He's huge. Try not to get a handful of wiener right now. What's up? Say what's up. What's up, buddy? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so that's my doggy. He's a silver lab. He's about 8 months old. He's getting really big. He just hit it like a growth spurt right now. He's just like popping up. So he's a good boy. Good boy. He's just chilling. He's a pretty active dog. He's wandering around right now. We've got some big trips planned this summer. I'm going to go camping with him and stuff. So, all right. I'm going to cue up that outro music, and we will bounce back out of here. Again, thank you so very much. And remember to be kind to one another, okay?